a moment. Yeah. So, hello everybody. I hope this course is going well for you, and I hope that you did attend your live session with your professor, the one who is taking this course, Professor S. Ganesh. If you guys are not aware about it, that session was held on Saturday, I think from 5 to 6 p.m. And I think you might have gained some intellectual insights if you might have been a part of that session, because you get to interact live with the sir, uh, apart from the recorded lectures that you already hear from him, right? So, anyway. Uh, Keeping that aside, we'll begin with today's lecture. The allotted time for this lecture is 7 to 9 p.m. Let's see if it'll take that long, else we'll end the class sooner. So let me first share my screen and then I'll introduce myself and also uh, let you guys know about what I'll be doing exactly in today's session. Okay. Okay. So I hope my screen is visible to all. Keeping that as an assumption that it is visible to everybody. Okay, so I have not edited this slide. What it should say actually is week 2 instead of week 1, right? So yeah. So what we'll be doing today is I have divided like the class into three major or broad segments. In the first segment, what we'll be doing is we'll go through the previous year's assignment that was given for this week 2, right? So that we'll be going through me, and since I have already made that assignment, there are a few almost similar or one or two exactly repeated questions from what we have done in the previous year's assignment for week 1. But nonetheless, there are just 10 questions. We'll go through those 10 questions. If at all there is any concept linked to those, we will quickly go through that concept. We will revise that or we will study that, whichever is the case, right? After that, what we'll be doing in the second segment is that I have a merged PDF from Sir's this week's lecture. We will quickly go through that PDF. If anybody has a question with anything that was taught, we can pause and we can focus on that concept. And the third part is that I have tried to incorporate some extra, maybe not topics, maybe extra examples to explain some of the topics that have been taught in this week's lecture. Right, so that is going to be segment 3 of today's class. Right, so I hope I am visible and audible, but nonetheless, um, I will share my screen once again before starting, right? Just to be on a safer side. Yeah. Okay. Okay, guys. So, beginning with the previous year's assignment for week 2, the first question that was asked with respect to this week's lecture last year was, this is a series of images which serves as an illustration for which one of these? Inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning, common sense, or discovery. So, as you might be aware, this is something that we have discussed at length in the first week's lecture and first week's practice sessions, right? These are things that we have discussed then. But nonetheless, what is going to be the correct answer for this one? So, if you recall, inductive reasoning is what is going to be the correct answer for this kind of an illustration, right? Because what is happening over here? Over here, there is an image given. or an illustration that is given, which has some set number of dots in A, in B, in C, and D has a question mark. So we have to guess based on what we observe in A, B, and C that what is this D going to be, right? So based on observations, we are going to make a conclusion. That is what inductive reasoning is, right? So I have again kept the slide wherein we can understand that inductive reasoning, what happens in inductive reasoning? There is a specific observation. Through that specific observation, we recognize a pattern, and based on that, we make a conclusion, right? Versus deductive reasoning, wherein what happens is that there is an existing theory that occurs, right? With uh, with correspondence to that theory, we can formulate a well-educated or well-researched hypothesis, right? After we form a hypothesis, what we do is we collect data, right? We perform experiments to verify our hypothesis, and we collect data. After we have collected data, we analyze that data, right? After we have analyzed that data, we see whether our proposed hypothesis is being proven or it is being disproven, right? So does this data reject the hypothesis, or it doesn't reject the hypothesis, in which way the hypothesis will be proven right, right? So that is what is deductive reasoning. Moving on to question number 2, which says, the image given below represents which one of these? Is it verbal communication or written communication or visual communication or all of these? So this is another thing that we have talked about in the first week's lectures and practice sessions, right? So it is another simple question. I hope everybody has the answer. So what is the answer for this particular question? It is visual communication, right? So is somebody trying to say something? Okay, I think it was a coincidental disturbance. Okay. Uh, so these are the kinds of signs and symbols that we see on roads, right? They are a form of visual communication, right? Moving on to question number 3, which says, this image represents one of the commercial advertisements for a product. Here we identify the leading man who is wearing a white coat and a tie. So what does this image represent? Okay, does it represent cleanliness? Does it represent the head of a family? Or it represents research and development? Or it represents a modeling career? So this leading man would represent research and development. So if you would have attended previous week's uh, practice session as well, so you might see that there is a pattern with these questions, right? They are very, very similar to what we solved last week also, right? So I was also a little surprised to see that pattern follow on to week 2 also, but nonetheless, we are going to cover up for that. So research and development is what is being depicted by this leading man in this image, right? As is the case for many other advertisements, wherein they basically claim that yes, this has been clinically tested, or this has been backed up by doctors and scientists, etc. Right? So people in white coat in these scenarios or these advertisements, what do they represent? They represent research and development. Moving on to question number 4, which says, which one of the following options is a true definition with regard to finding discovery in science? So, options are finding something that had not been known before, or an accidental outcome, or an outcome of a well-defined and planned activity, or all of these. So, I hope you have a working knowledge of what a discovery is. In that case, this is also another simple question. Okay, moving on to the answer for this particular question. It is finding something that had not been known before. Okay, so yeah. So what is a discovery? A discovery is basically if somebody goes out and they find something that was already present in nature, but it had not been uh, like observed correctly, or its existence was not understood or not known, right? For example, the examples of discovery could be one of the examples of a discoverer rather could be Columbus, right? So I hope everybody is aware about this great fellow in history who was named Christopher Columbus, right? So who was this man? This man was actually a sailor, right? But he discovered many, many mainlands, including USA, right? So what does that mean? USA or America was a landmass. It is a major landmass. It always existed where it does today also, right? But just that its existence had not been known or had not been popularized, or this knowledge had not been shared by man before Christopher Columbus actually went and found that place, right? So that is why it is said that Columbus discovered America, right? It was not as if he pulled America out of the ocean. No, it was already there, but that knowledge was correctly observed and correctly told to other people by Christopher Columbus. So that is why it is said that it was discovered by Columbus, right? So moving on to question number 5, which says, in the statement, I was born in India. India is the seventh largest country by area and second most populous country in the world. The text given in red and green color fonts represent respectively the theory and hypothesis, or given a new concept, or cause and consequence of the experiment, or none of these. So you can go through this statement again, um, and whatever is closest to whichever option is closest to the correct option, we will choose that. Okay, just a moment. Okay, so the answer for this question was given and new. So- Hello, um, do you want to say something? Okay. So in this particular sentence, I was born in India, right? This sentence is being said by me, and I was born in India, right? I am saying that. So this is a given, right? That I am telling you that I was born in India. And then what is being said? India is the seventh largest country by area and the second most populous country in the world, right? Now, this is something that has been researched upon, information has been gathered upon that, due to which we have this knowledge, right? So it is another concept, but it is nothing that I am telling you from the intrinsic knowledge that I have, right? So the given over here is that I was born in India, and the statement about India, this fact, right, that currently is a fact, is a new concept that is being introduced into the conversation by me, right? So the answer over here will be given and new concept, right? So moving ahead, question number 6 says, the term scientifically acceptable general principle based on experimental evidence refers to. Which one of these? So, is it a hypothesis or a theory or a law or a common sense? So this particular question is one with which I also had a problem, right? So it took me a while to understand which answer is correct and why it is correct. So it is a little trickier. I hope my video is not breaking, um, because it is lagging a little. I will come to the answer for this question, but let me just switch my network and share my screen again, okay? Just a moment. Yeah, I hope that it will be better now. Yeah, let me check if the recording is still on. Yeah, it's on. Okay, so I'll share my screen again. And we have come back to the question that we were discussing earlier, which is which one of these terms correctly fits this statement, which is it is a scientifically acceptable general principle based on experimental evidence. So let us discuss the answer for this question. And the answer for this question is theory, right? So when I first read this question, what the answer that I marked was law, right? Because it said that this particular principle is based on experimental evidence, right? But on further research and on when I went and I checked the terminologies of these three, and when I verified this statement again, uh, the results turned out to be theory rather than law, which was actually the given answer in last year's assessment as well. So I did not straight out believe that answer, which is why I researched it a bit, right? So why is it theory and why not a law is because a law generally is something that is either a natural law, so it is a law by nature, or it is a theory that has a well proven mathematical evidence to it, right? That is a law, right? But uh, any hypothesis that has scientific evidence uh, that supports or backs up that particular hypothesis is a theory, right? Until and unless there is evidence that can disprove this particular hypothesis. But there will be experimental evidence that exists to back this particular hypothesis that becomes a theory. For example, if we want to take a very, very general example, we can talk about natural selection, right? Natural selection is a theory. Why is it a theory? Because somebody, on the basis of certain observations, uh, made this hypothesis that I think that there were different observations, right? There was one survival of the fittest, there was one natural selection. Well, these were various hypotheses that were competing for how evolution occurred, right? But once paleontological data was found, right, there were fossils that were found, and there were missing links between and the animals that we knew existed and they exist right now. These paleontological evidences was found. Uh, then their study basically supported the presence of or the feasibility of uh, this natural selection to have occurred over something that was known as survival of the sorry Okay, survival of the fittest is a part of natural selection. What the other one that I thought I was quoting was Lamarckism, right? I am so sorry to quote it wrong. So I was quoting about Lamarckism and survival of the fittest or natural selection, right? So Lamarckism was not supported by paleontological evidence, but paleontological evidence did support survival of the fittest or natural selection, right? Based on which this hypothesis became a theory. Now, there is scientific evidence to back up this hypothesis. Thus, it has become a theory. So, until and unless we have more evidence that can disprove it, it will remain a theory. So, it is a scientifically accepted general principle and it is based on experimental evidence, right? So, that is why the correct answer over here is going to be theory. I hope you guys could understand that because it took me a while to understand it. Sorry. Um, I hope I'm audible. Um, Could somebody please let me know if I'm audible or not? Because I have tampered with some physical key on my laptop and I am unable to make out whether I'm audible or not.
You are audible, madam.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, yeah. Coming to question number 7, right? Which says the illustration presented here is an example of a research project paradigm that outlines the various steps one should take while organizing and carrying out any research project. Choose the option that most accurately describes the schematic shown and the overarching idea that links each spoke, right? So this is another problem that we have discussed in the previous week's lecture. It was framed in a different way then. So I will not spend much time over here. I hope everybody is aware from the previous week's lectures and practice sessions that this image over here is of an inquiry wheel and it represents that one should ask questions, right? So one should always ask questions in order to like uh, ask questions and inquire in order to move forward with their research, right? So moving forward to question number 8, which says, which one of the following definitions of hypothesis is accurate? So is it our observations around the world as it is, or a proposed explanation for a phenomena made as a starting point for further investigation, or a well substantiated explanation acquired through the scientific method, or all of these? Yeah. So we'll move on to the answer for this question, which is that hypothesis, the most accurate definition of hypothesis out of these is that hypothesis is a proposed explanation for a phenomena made as a starting point for further investigation, right? So question number 9 says, in writing a research paper, the term hourglass concept refers to which one of these? Is it preparing timeline and agreeing on the timeline for writing and submitting of a research paper, or using an hourglass for the scientific reasoning, or the structure of the research paper starting with a general overview, narrowing to a specific aim, and then again extrapolating the results to a generic concept, or none of these? So,
C, madam.
I
C.
yeah, so the answer is C. What I was going to say is that with reference to this week's lectures, I think it was common sense to choose option number C, right? Because over here we say that we start with a general overview, which is obviously going to be, if it is generalized, it covers a broader base, right? Then it says that it narrows to a specific aim. So it is going to narrow down. And then we will extrapolate the results to a generic concept. So extrapolating again will be on a broader base, right? So based on that, one could pick this option that, okay, this might be the correct definition for hourglass concept. Okay, so question number 10 is similar to the one we have discussed earlier, which says, several summers ago, there was a Scotty who went to the country for a visit. He decided that all the farm dogs were cowards because they were afraid of a certain animal that had a white stripe down its back. In this sentence, the text given in blue and red fonts represent respectively which one of these? Is it a new and given a new concept, or theory and hypothesis, or cause and consequence of an experiment, or none of these? So the answer for this is none of these. Although in previous year's assessment, the answer marked earlier was given a new concept, but let us go through why we have marked none of these over here. So the first statement that is in blue says that several summers ago, there was a Scotty. A Scotty over here would refer to somebody who is from Scotland, right? There was a Scotty who went to the country for a visit, right? So that could be a given, right? Or the other notion could be that Scotty could be a name of a person who went to some country for a visit. That would also be a given, right? It could not be a theory, it could not be a cause, right? It would be a given. Now, what is the second statement in red? That he decided that all the farm dogs were cowards because they were afraid of certain animal that had a white stripe down its back, right? So there are two contrasting answers. The one that was marked in previous years' assessment was actually given a new concept. Why was it marked like that? Is because he decided is not actually in red color, right? So we are not saying that he's deciding. We are just assessing what is in what is in red color, and that could be one particular statement. So that could be a new concept. But over here, when we read the entire statement, we would like most probably it is a hypothesis that this person is given based on some few or few farm dogs that that person has actually seen, right? So it is a hypothesis that that person is given. So that is why, since one was given and the other was a hypothesis, I marked it as none of these. Okay, so that was it for the previous year's question part. uh Sorry.
Madam, you are not audible now.
Yeah, I had turned on off my audio. Uh, so I'll share my screen also again to people who have joined a little while later. What I had said was that I have divided the lecture into three segments. Segment one was the previous year's question that we were doing. We are done with it for now. Now, what we'll be doing first is a quick recap for week two lectures, right? We will go through the PDFs. If required, we will stop at a place, elaborate on the concept that is being discussed. And after that, there is a very short um, lecture or a very short slide segment that I have kept, which includes like some other examples of some of the concepts that have been discussed, so as to like if somebody is curious with respect to science or with respect to those concepts, it might be interesting for you, right? So I'm sharing my screen again to discuss or recap the previous week's lecture. Yeah. So it's in this week, what we actually discussed, or what Professor Ganesh rather actually discussed, was a few terms like common sense, wherein he talked about common sense, which is like there is a very common statement. That I think people of our generation and even the previous generation had been taunting each other with back in our school days, right? That common sense is not that common. So I don't know if you guys relate to it, but yeah. So common sense is a sound practical judgment concerning everyday matters or a basic ability to perceive, understand, and judge that is shared by or common to nearly all people, right? But there are some really basic things that sometimes are not that easily understandable by everybody, right? So for example, sir took an example of this bike that was secured well because it was tied to a pillar. But on the other hand, if we actually see the entire picture, we can see that the bike as well as the lock that is tied to that bike, both of them are not safe because the pillar is open from the top, right? And both of them can be stolen. So that is how we began with this week's lectures. We discussed further more about common sense and how like it is described as the ability with which animals, including human beings, process sense perceptions, memories, and imaginations in order to reach many types of basic judgments. Right? So, yeah, many. I don't know why this highlighter is not working for me. Okay, anyway, I'm not going to tamper it more. Yeah. So, then so discussed about how basically we come up with a reasoning or a common sense, right, for anything. So the first thing, whenever we look at something or whenever something around is going around us, or whenever we have to perform some specific task, we will consciously or subconsciously ask why, right? Maybe if I am asked to go and bring water, right, for somebody, I might be at my home and I might go to the kitchen, take up a glass, take up a tray, so pour water and bring it for that person, right? So I will not consciously ask this question, but maybe I am in some unfamiliar place. So I will go and ask, like, why are you asking me to go and get it, right? So I don't even know your kitchen, but once I actually can get like this in my head that okay, maybe the other people are at location such that it is unfavorable for them to get up, or maybe I'm already up, I'm near to the door, so they can my next question will be how, so how am I going to go and get water, right? So that is something that I will ask them, or maybe they will instruct me, right? And then what will be my expectations, that once I reach the kitchen, once somebody has instructed me what I have to do, and once I actually reach the kitchen, what will happen, that I will immediately find where the glass is, where the water, where the aquaguard or the RO is, and where the tray is, right? Things like that. And based on that, like I will uh, perform that task and I will bring water, right? So, any task, whether it is a small, as small a task as bringing water, or as big a task as maybe researching upon the fact that why does a gene behave the way it does, right? So it would require some set of questions, right? So not these set of questions will not just be uh, like common to common sense, but even as models for a research, right? So in a model for a research, the analogous questions or that we are going to ask will be a research question, that, for example, I have this gene XYZ. I want to know that what does the loss of this gene do to a animal model, to a specific animal model. Based on the known facts about that particular gene, I will develop a theory that maybe I think that it will cause some kind of loss of muscle tone, right? And then I will identify variables, if any. So, for example, if I am researching upon some particular model, same mouse, and if I have to work on its muscle, so I will have to find out if there are some general things that I need to, general experiments that people usually do perform on muscles, whether I have to perform those, right? And other variables as well. Then I will identify my hypothesis. Then I will test my hypothesis through various experiments. And at the end, I will evaluate the results, and I will send those results or show those results to more experienced people and mentors and colleagues for their for their review, right? And at the end of everything, I will publish those results, right? So there was one another common model that was discussed by Sir, that if, for example, I'm working on my laptop, right, and it is connected to a power cable. For example, my laptop did not work if this cable was not continuously attached to it, right? It had no power backup. All of a sudden, my the screen of my laptop went off. So what would I ask? The question would be that, is something wrong with the laptop? Is something wrong with the extension port that I am using, or is there some problem with the plug point, or maybe there is a power cut, right? But I will know if there is a power cut because my lights will also turn off, right? So there could be different questions based on different observations that I have. So similar to what Sir has already discussed. So yeah. So, and okay, this is something I'm going to discuss a little further because this comes back, right? When we talk about publishing some research in a paper, again, there is a format that is followed. That format also kind of is analogous to our research model and questions that come when we talk about common sense, right? So, this paper format has an introduction paragraph. In the introduction, we will briefly introduce the topic of research, the research question, etc. Then we will write about how this research was performed. Then we will publish the results that were obtained when certain experiments were performed. And then we will extrapolate those results, infer those results, and extrapolate our finding in the conclusion section, right? So that is how it is done. Also, when we talk about research, there are these four important things that need to be okay. Okay, it's not getting out. These four important things that need to be points that need to be kept in mind for that research to be a solid research, or the statement that we are making via research to go as a strong, solid statement, right? That whatever research we are performing, it should be quantifiable, right? For example, uh, it is also kind of a new trend, and the trend has arisen because of maybe better research output following this trend. So first, what used to happen if we talk about maybe science 100 years ago, or maybe even 70, 80 years ago, right? In 1950, for example, do you think that if there was an experiment, if there was an observation, one couldn't publish that observation? No. So if somebody saw something in nature and they could explain even theoretically, like if there was a hypothesis that actually correct. Deepika, are you trying to say something? Because you are not audible.
No, my connection is not good.
Okay. So all I heard was that there was some problem with the connection. It's okay. Okay. So, yeah, maybe if we talk about 1950s, if you could come up with a strong, solid reasoning for what might be happening, you could even publish that reasoning, right? But now, at this point or at this hour in research, what happens is that good that you have come up with the reasoning, but you yourself need to plan experiments to validate that, right? I am not talking about some specific fields, like there are some theoretical fields that still exist. For example, if I talk about fields such as chemistry or physiology and such fields, right? Wherein if for example I am clinical practitioner or I work in a pathology lab and I see some particular like pattern in the kinds of samples that we are receiving, and I think that it might be due to a certain reason, I can go to the publisher with that uh, question and that possible answer, and I can publish my results. But now at this point in research, what happens is that until and unless I actually perform experiments and experiments wherein which are also very extensive. Quantification needs to be done for experiments, even such as counting, or there has to be statistics involved. That okay, even if there was a counting experiment, you should have done it thrice, or there should have been blind studies to count whatever was being counted, right? So that it is uh, like acceptable, that yes, this quantification is correct. So it should be quantifiable, it should be verifiable, that if somebody tries to verify the whatever you are saying, they are able to do so, right? This could be done if previous literature is backing you, if the literature that is published after yours is backing you, or if the experiments are replicable, right? Whatever you have written in your paper, you will mention a methodology as well, right? So that if somebody else also follows that methodology, they will be able to get the same result. So it should be replicable, right? That will also verify your research. And it should be defensible. That is, you should be able to defend whatever you are publishing or showing. So this was an example of something we had discussed in the previous year questions also, that there are some brands that claim that yes, we have the doctor's recommendation and the scientist recommendation, and they have the same kind of pattern with a person with a white coat that represents research and development, so as to back what they are claiming, right? Okay. So, once we talk about, uh, let's come to this slide. Once we talk about this particular loop, wherein we could have a theory that exists, right? Based on that, we could pick a hypothesis, right? We could study that theory intensively, and to maybe as an outcome of that theory, or to maybe fill the gaps that remain in proving of that theory, we can generate a hypothesis, right? So then comes hypothesis generation, at the end of which we receive a hypothesis. Once that is done, we have to research, design a research, and measure and sample and perform experiments, at the end of which we receive data, right? After this data is received, we need to infer this data, and we need to analyze this, and we need to put statistics into verifying whether our analysis is or data is correct or not, and then we'll verify it, and then we will again present it and publish it, which will include generalization, culmination, etc., and that will contribute to the theory from which we have basically picked up this hypothesis in the first place, right? So this could also help you understand that whenever we get a hypothesis, right? A hypothesis could be a novel topic that we want to research on, or it could be dependent on an initial leads that already exist, right? So, for example, um if I say that I want to work on, say, cleaning of Ganges River, right? So that is going to be my research interest and research project, right? So I want to work out ways so that we can clean Ganges. Just a moment. Okay. So that we can clean Ganges, right? Maybe it is a new thing that I have come up with, right? Maybe again, 100 years ago, if I would have proposed this, then it might be a new thing that I have come up with, and I need to begin from the start. That okay, I need to clean. So what do I need to begin with? Maybe I need to first stop that these people are coming and washing their clothes over here. Maybe I need to stop that. Then this agricultural waste is coming back over here, that I need to stop. Or maybe there are people who are so it could be a novel idea, right? But if today I am telling you that, okay, I want to clean Ganges River, right? Now that might be a new thing when I talk with respect to Ganges River. But there might be other rivers in which similar research is being going on, or similar projects are going on, right? Maybe they are a little different. Maybe some place needs more cleaning because there is maybe more detergent that is coming over there, or more industrial waste that is coming over there. Maybe some other river needs more cleaning because the natural flora and fauna are dying over there, right? So that debris needs to be cleaned. So the challenges might be different, right? So it will still be a novel research, but it will be based on some initial leads that I might get from, say, somebody who is trying to who was trying to clean, say, Kaveri River or Krishna River, even 20 years before I started cleaning Ganga River, right? So it could come from initial leads somewhere else, right? That can also help you in building your hypothesis. Okay. So then we come to this particular question, which is discovery versus invention. So although I have kept a slide for this of what is discovery, what is invention. So maybe we'll talk about it when we come to that particular slide. And then there was the discussion about some self-cleaning wall paint. That was actually a concept that was basically brought about by some biomimetics, right? So there are things in nature that already exist, right? And observations, or correct and good observations, can actually help us a lot. For example, if we say that how did we come up with the concept of, say, submarines, right? Or how did we come up with the concept of hot water, right? Because there exists hot water in nature, and somebody might have found that, and they might have uh, like found it to be soothing, right? Because most of the geysers that exist, the hot water ponds or hot water springs that exist in nature, they actually occur at temperatures which are generally very, very low, right? So they will, like, it is a nature's way of soothing the other organisms or the other flora and fauna that are actually existing in that environment, right? So most of the answers we can actually find in nature, right? For example, say a billion years ago, somebody first might have picked up a leaf and eaten that leaf, and now we might be using that leaf. in our daily vegetables, right?
Mm.
So somebody might have done it earlier. On the contrary, somebody might have ingested some really poisonous leaf. That is how we are able to exclude it out of our meal today, right? Things that could cause allergies and could lead to anaphylactic shocks and death, etc. Right? So, observation is key for you to become a good researcher or a good scientist. Then we will talk about the eyeglass model, which we have briefly talked about in the question answer series, right? And then again, it is the continuation of the example that was being discussed. And then we come to hypothesis. So, what is actually a definition of the hypothesis? A hypothesis can be defined as a tentative explanation of a research problem, a possible outcome of the research, or an educated guess about the research outcome, right? Or it is a statement or explanation that is suggested by knowledge or observation but has not
Mm.
yet been proven or proved or disproved, right? So, as we said, we will have some observations based on which we will formulate a hypothesis, or we will have some previous literature, right? We will actually go and read that literature. For example, what I want to do is I want to build maybe a microscope. Right now, I want to advance what is already there, right? I will not build a microscope that is already existing and being sold in the market. I want to better that technology, right? For that, what I need to do is I need to study. I really need to study as to how a microscope is built, what is currently going on in the market, what is mostly being used. Apart from that, is already
చిన్నది
done,
నేను
what
కూడా
is already
తెచ్చుకో ఉంటావా
being researched on. Okay, just a moment. Yeah, so that's what a hypothesis is going to be, right? And hypothesis needs to be a very well researched statement that we are saying, right? So, please excuse me. Yeah, so hypothesis needs to be a really well researched statement. Um, uh, so that Yeah, it needs to be a really well researched statement so that actually, like you can, it is feasible for you to perform or plan experiments so as to prove or disprove it, right? But you, if it is your, if you have researched well about it, you will probably formulate a hypothesis that you would want to prove, right? Now, it might happen that the circumstances are such or the data is such that it might not be proven, right? But that is not in your hands. But if it is well researched, it has more chances of being proven than unproven, right? Or than disproven. So there are actually some researches also, some papers also about this, wherein the initial formulation of hypothesis is actually a very key factor. It was seen that the quality of research is much better if your initially formulated hypothesis itself is well researched, right? So that you have to struggle little later so as to modify your hypothesis, right? So anyway, what will be the nature of hypothesis? It is basically a clear statement of what is intended to be investigated. It should be specified before research is conducted and openly stated in reporting the results. And a hypothesis basically allows to identify key research objectives, identify the key abstract concepts involved in research, and identify its relation to both the problem statement and the literature review, right? So we will have to go and read the literature very nicely. We will have to find gaps in that literature that exist, and we will have to come up with a solution or a possible solution that can actually help or fill those gaps, right? Then a problem cannot be scientifically solved unless it is reduced to hypothesis form, and it is a powerful tool of advancement of knowledge consistent with existing knowledge and conducive to further inquiry. So what is the second point? The second point basically means that we can state problems in a more generalized fashion also. So what will be a generalized problem that I state? For example, I say that the incidence of cancer is very high. I would like to work on cancer and to cure cancer. Right now, this is a very, very generalized statement. Right? Is it possible for me to plan experiments to solve this problem? No. So why is it not possible? Because what I'm saying is a very, very general view, right? Over here, I'm not specifying the type of cancer. So if I start to plan experiments, maybe one experiment I will plan for colorectal cancer, the other I'll plan for breast cancer, the third one for pancreatic cancer. So it will not have any relation to each other because there are different problems that is being faced by different cancers, and even within the same cancer there are different kinds of mutations that exist that can change how the cancer is presented or how it is going to proceed as a disease, right? So all this is very different. I can't generalize my statement as that cancer is very prevalent. I want to cure cancer, right? I have to pick which kind of cancer. I have to see what kinds of mutations or what kinds of differences that exist in that kind of cancer, right? Then I need to go and maybe list down which particular kind of mutation in this particular kind of cancer do I want to work on. Then maybe I can plan some experiments that I might be able to prove, right? Otherwise, it is a very, very difficult job, right? So, a problem cannot be scientifically solved unless it is reduced to a hypothesis form, right? And based on that, maybe I say that I want to work on triple negative breast cancer, and I go through the literature of that triple negative breast cancer, and I come up with a hypothesis that I think that this is the data from these patients that was obtained, and this is the data from some mouse studies that was recently being done. Based on this, I think that earlier, because patients were responding well to this particular drug, maybe if we modify the dosage of this drug, or maybe if we bring in this new kind of drug, maybe we'll be able to cure the patients, right? So that is a hypothesis. It is not a general statement, it is a very short statement, but you will have to plan your experiment so as to prove that short statement. So, the example that sir gave was cell-cell communication is essential for homeostatic process in human, right? Or Y chromosome in human is essential for the male sex development. So, this is what sir developed, and you have gone through the lecture, so you might be aware of it. So, a hypothesis can be tested. It is either verifiable or falsifiable, that is, it can be proven or disproven. The hypotheses are not moral or ethical questions. For example, I can't list this as my hypothesis that is it um like maybe some political question, or my hypothesis can't be that is it uh, justifiable to use animal models for research, right? So that is a very ethical question, right? That cannot be my hypothesis. It is neither too specific nor too general. For example, over here I said that I can't say that I want to cure cancer as my hypothesis, right? What I said instead was that I want to work on the triple negative breast cancer, and in that some XYZ drug was working nice. Patients were responding nicely to this XYZ drug. I want to modulate the dosage of this XYZ drug and see if it works on this particular cancer and similar cancers like this, right? So this could be my hypothesis. Now, it is not very specific also, that I am not saying that this is the only thing I'm going to do, right? So I am also saying that if I am able to do this, I will try to extrapolate this similar data to some other kinds of cancers, right? So it should not be very specific nor very general. It is a prediction of consequences. So a well-educated or a well-researched hypothesis will kind of predict what you expect will happen after your experiments are done, right? Then it is considered valuable even if it is proven false, because what will that tell? That, yeah, we understand what you had presented was the most logical reasoning of what could have happened. Despite that, your data suggests that this is not what is happening. So at least we now know that, okay, we can't always trust this thing, and we at least now know that this is what is definitely not happening in this particular disease, right? So you have all gone through the example, so I'm going to skip it. uh, yeah. So coming to the scientific evaluation of a hypothesis, uh, which started, the lecture started with this statement: the theories come and theories go, and the frog remains. So there is a very, very famous developmental biology book that is Gilbert, right? I don't know whether the latest edition is 13th or 14th or maybe even later. I might not be up to date, right? So if you pick up the previous editions of that particular Dev Bio book and versus the latest edition, you will see how many new kinds of theories and experiments have been done in developmental biology, and how many new things they can actually prove. For example, how does limb formation occur if there is a if a maybe a limb is chopped off in a particular animal, for example, a frog. Can it regenerate if it has circumstances? It certain circumstances under certain circumstances it does regenerate. Under certain others, it does not regenerate. Then how do we understand those circumstances, etc.? Like uh, then another example that we can skip, because I'm sure you have all gone through these examples, right? Uh, so, yeah, these are examples that I am going to skip. Uh, and maybe we can end with the statement that data do not make make a thesis without an excellent hypothesis, defined outcomes, measures, and good methodology. Collected data cannot lead to meaningful insights. Above all, a good thesis depends on an excellent hypothesis. It is more than a coincidence that a thesis is derived from underlying hypothesis, right? So that was the end for that part. Then we come to the more structural part about how a scientific report is written, right? What are the components of a scientific reports? Components such as an abstract, an introduction, a methodology, results section, then a discussion, then conclusion, etc. Right? So there are different ways that different kinds of scientific reports can be written, and these reports will, as Sir said, or as he already talked about, will depend on how you are writing a report. Will depend on who you are writing that report to, or who you are addressing that report to. Right? The content will vary, how you are framing your report will vary, and what is the kind of thing you are laying emphasis on will also vary. For example, if I am a PhD scholar, if I have a work presentation with my guide or my PI tomorrow, I will lay more emphasis on the experiments that I have performed, the observations that I have received or seen for those particular objectives, and what I think it could mean. And I will basically present that, right? And based on that, some experiments that I propose to perform in the future, right? Then that is what is important for me to present to my guide, so that I can receive valuable inputs from my guide in that context, right? So that my guide can tell me that, yeah, I think you are thinking in the right direction. Or maybe they can say that this is something that one of my earlier PhD students had already thought of. They actually worked in this direction and we actually did not succeed, right? So maybe instead of this, you can think about performing this particular experiment. It might help you better, right? So as to gain insights, I will frame my presentation or my report in that way, right? If on the other hand, I had to write a grant, right? I will emphasize on what is the research problem, how I feel this research problem is really important to and it should be worked upon, and what the broader plan, like how do I plan to do or plan to prove this particular hypothesis that I am stating, etc. Right? Um, So, matlab, it is very context specific. Who you are talking to will determine how you have to be, like how you have to present yourself and your data, right? Okay. So, in addition to the research type, the structure of your text can also be affected by several other factors, such as national cultural preferences. For example, um, what could be a national cultural preference? For example, the map example that Sir gave, that if we talk about an Indian map, we have a certain image in our head. Maybe somebody who is in one of the neighboring countries of India might have some other image in their head, because that is what is the map of India that is provided by their nation, right? So that could be one of the national cultural preferences. The other could be that some research, although mostly it is done in English, but some research is still available in Latin or French, etc., right? The native languages. Then discipline specific conventions could occur, right? For example, if I am a biology background person, and there is an electrical background person, there might be some kinds of pattern that we follow in our research and our report writing and our paper writing that may be different from what an electrical background PhD student might follow, right? Then differences according to text type or genre, such as proposal, feasibility, study, journal article, popular magazine article, etc. So this will even differ from a journal to journal, right? For example, when we submit a paper, some journals have this uh, kind of pattern that they want you to select or submit six main figures, right? So these will be six main pictures with their legends that will be present in the picture. And if at all you have more images that are present that do not fit in those six like clusters, then they could go in your supplementary data. On the contrary, you might be working on something that is more like you have more number of graphs, but they come in one cluster, right? So you do not have six different images, but this particular journal has this prerequisite that you do need six figures. So they will ask you to do certain experiments so as to uh, have those kinds of six figures that they actually require, right? Also, the how you write an abstract, the instructions, the general instructions, they differ from journal to journal. How many words abstracted can be, that differs. How many words paper it could be, that differs from journal to journal, etc. So there could be many differences that occur, and the style of publication to which you submit your text, right? So, what is the style of publication? Whether it is a short communication, whether it is a letter, whether it is a review, whether it is a research article. So, there are different kinds of publications that exist, right? Styles of publications that exist. Then, what is the typical structure of a scientific report? When we talk about a scientific report, this is the most general structure. There might be some additions or exclusions from it. They are the traditional style of your report writing is basically an hourglass concept, right? The traditional selections of a paper include introduction, methods, results, and discussion section, and often referred to by the acronym IMRAT, right? So, an introduction is basically introducing your topic, then you are narrowing down to what you are actually doing, then you are narrowing down to the results, right? Then you are talking about the observations from your results, and then you are talking about what these observations mean on a broader perspective, right? So that is an hourglass theory. And most of the scientific reports have this kind of a structure, right? Then, along with this, most of them also do have an abstract. What is an abstract? An abstract will basically be kind of a pitch, right? That if I have some business idea and I want an investor, right? I will have to pitch that idea to that investor in very very concisely. I will have to formulate that pitch such that I do not waste the time of that person, and in very few words I am able to get across my point clearly. So that is kind of analogous to what an abstract is, right? Then this is one of the examples of what or how an scientific report could work, right? Then the introduction of a topic is what we begin with. Then we talk about the hypothesis, then we define the question, then we talk about the study design, then observations, then interpretation of that observation, then discussion and conclusion, right? So we are going to skip these examples, right? Okay. And we come to abstract, which is the final discussion for today. right? And especially for the recap section. So, what is an abstract? An abstract is basically a summary of the contents of a book, an article, or a speech. The major question is how to write an abstract. And writing an abstract is actually at least from what I have heard from my peers and my seniors, it is, and my professors as well, it is the most difficult part of the paper, right? Because you have done everything, you will know how to write it or how to basically present everything, but writing it in a very consolidated form and a very convincing form and a very captivating form, that is the most difficult part, right? So it is one of the most difficult parts of a paper or writing a paper. uh, Abstract is like the TV commercial, whether the reader would read the entire report or not depends on the interest you create on the topic of interest in the abstract itself, right? So since so much depends upon it also, it really has to be nice and captivating. So, again, there were some TV commercials that showed you, and I hope it got across the point that, again, whatever you are saying needs to do justice to whatever you have written in your research report or research article, right? Then, about how to write an abstract, I'll actually prepare a detailed set of slides for this particular topic in the next week's lectures. But going through this lecture slide, the six key sentences of an abstract are: introduction. In one sentence, we introduce what the topic is. Then we state the problem that we are trying to tackle. Then we summarize in another sentence why nobody else has adequately answered the research question yet, right? So, for example, it could be that the means were not as advanced, or maybe people were focusing on this point, but now I particularly want to focus on this point because I think this is also relevant, right? Then explain in one sentence how you tackled the research question, right? So abstract is something you will receive, you will write at the end of the entire paper. So you know what your results are, you know what you have observed out of them, you know how to infer that data, right? At the end, you will write how you have tackled that research question. Then, in one sentence, you will write how did you go about doing the research that follows from your big idea, and as a single sentence, what is the key impact of your research, right? So this is going to be the major points of how we write an abstract, right? So this is a well-written abstract uh, that is, if it does contain these things, right? So I actually have one or two papers and one or two abstracts that I would like to cite in the next week's lectures that I have been unable to include in my slides today, right? So yeah, I think that is it for the recap. I will quickly switch my slides uh, to the very, very short and concise lecture that I was talking about. And again, I have missed this, right? So this is week two's lecture. Let me share my screen again. Before I do that, please give me a moment to have strip cells and okay, I hope that will help me and I'll not cough for a while. Okay. So I'll share my screen again. Hmm. Right? Yeah. So this is a final segment for today's lecture, which does not have extra questions, but we do have some extra concepts. And I did go through the discussion forum. There were not any specific doubts that I would be able to solve in this particular session, right? So we can skip that line for this week's session as well. Just a moment. Yeah. Yeah. So this is again one of the slides. And we talked about what research is, right? But I wanted to read out this particular statement that I picked from Western Sydney University's website, which basically stated that research is defined as the creation of new knowledge and or the use of existing knowledge in a new and creative way so as to generate new concepts, methodologies, and understandings, right? So, for example, uh, I might one kind of research would be to invent, say, irons, right? The one we use for pressing our clothes or ironing our clothes, right? That could be one kind of invention. And we can consider that to be a new knowledge, right? But what could be another use of that particular technology? Another, there could be multiple, there have actually been multiple other uses for that technology that have come up. So, for example, one of them could be that when lamination is done, something similar to that iron, but in a different way, it is used so that you press upon or you iron out the particular plastic on whatever document you have, so as to secure that document inside there, right? And then you seal it using another kind of uh, hot uh, or heat sensitive technology, right? Just a moment. Yeah. Another kind of heat sensitive technology. What could be a third use of that existing technology? I don't know about the guys in the meeting, but if you have like other females in your homes that use some hair products and hair appliances, you might be aware of a hair straightening tool. So when you actually look at that hair straightening tool or hair straightening device, you will see that on either side of that is a surface very similar to the iron that we use at home for ironing out or pressing our clothes, right? So that was a technology that already existed. It has been modified into something new that is used for something else, right? So, thus, but all of these are different research products that have come up by different people, right? So, and it like the hair straightener cannot be called as a was copying the iron, right? It was a new thing that was built upon or based upon something existing, right? Okay. So then I wanted to, based on that, I wanted to discuss this particular chart wherein we talked about initial ideas that are often vague and general that lead to initial observations and search of existing research and literature, which basically lead to one problem statement or formulation of a problem statement or and eventually a research hypothesis. Okay. But this is something we have already discussed, right? Then we talk about discovery and invention. So again, this is something we talked about while we were solving our previous year questions. But What is a discovery? The concept of discovery indicates the process of finding something that exists but that is not known or recognized yet, right? For example, if I find a new kind of ant tomorrow, or if I found a new kind of insect tomorrow, it is not like I have created that insect. It will just be that that insect already existed in nature, but it had not been known to mankind or it had not been recognized yet, right? So that will be my discovery, right? But on the contrary, what is an invention? The concept of invention, on the other hand, indicates the process of devising something that does not exist. For example, if I design a robot bee or a robot ant, that will be an invention, right? I don't know what it is going to do. Maybe a robot bee that could help in pollination or something like that. But that will be an invention because that is something that did not exist. I have made that happen, right? So that will be an invention. So that is the major distinction between a discovery and an invention. Then something that I wanted to lay more emphasis on was biomimetics, right? Or biomimicry. So I am sure there are some um, kinds of biomimetics you might already be aware of. One common one we'll talk about next. Now this is one. Okay. Can you recognize what this image is? So if you actually have gone through some wildlife images, or you do know some, or you are aware of some kinds of animals in the animal kingdom, you will be able to make out that this is basically one of the limbs of some reptile, right? So what is this reptile? This reptile is actually a kind of lizard that is known as gecko, right? So what happens in geckos, as you can see over here, the toes are a little different. And this is one thing that we have observed if we click zoomed in shot of their toes, right? Another thing that we already know about geckos is that these lizards can walk up smooth surfaces like stone walls and even glass. So glass is very, very smooth, but these lizards can walk on glass as well, right? So the scientists tried to understand how this is possible, right? So when they actually performed research and they actually observed their limbs, etc., they discovered that tiny microscopic hairs on their toes help them stick to surfaces, right? And this knowledge was used to develop adhesives that can basically close wounds without stitches and more, right? So, just out of curiosity of how something is possible, right? If I say that, for example, the frog can really jump really high, right? Now I know how that happens because it has very, very long and very, very strong hind limbs, right? So that it can generate that much force that it can really jump high. But there might be have been a time where I might not have known, or maybe mankind in general was not aware about this concept, right? That how that happens. And maybe if we understand the mechanics of how something happens, we might be able to solve problems that we have been facing, right? There are other examples for that. For example, this, right? Now, this image has been taken from a herbarium in Pittsburgh, right? And as the name already suggests, it is carnage, right? Now, what is this carnage? This carnage is basically a kind of plant. It is a bush or a burr, right? Now it has given the study of or observation of a particular person who actually looked at this carnage actually gave rise to one of the most commonly used one of the commonly used methods of securing something that we know of, right? So what is it? In 1941, what happened was that there was an engineer, George D. Mestral. He was walking with his dog when he noticed birds like carnage that have been shown over here. Now, these birds were sticking to one another, right? Then what he did was he studied them under a microscope, right? He magnified these birds and he studied, and he found their clinging property was the result of hundreds of tiny hooks that were present, right? So if we look at them under microscope, we will see that there are very tiny hook-like structures such that if we push two birds together, they will kind of stick, right? Because those hooks will be locked with one another. His observation sparked the idea for the very useful invention we today know as Velcro fastening, right? So again, it is a biomimetic, right? Something that we saw in nature, we were able to implement as one of the securing mechanisms, right? In multiple, which has a multifold usage, right? Okay. Uh, so my next question would be, how many of you know who these two gentlemen are? Okay. So I think that long pause was enough, even for people who are or who will be watching on YouTube, right? So these two gentlemen are Oliver and Wilbur Wright. So the point is, how many of you know who they are, even after I told you their names? So let me just introduce them. These are the two gentlemen that first designed an airplane, right? Now, how they designed an airplane was that they were very, very intrigued by how birds could fly, right? How there could be creatures or organisms that existed that could actually fly, right? So they constantly observed a lot of birds that were present in their vicinity. And they saw that they had these wings that were present. And along with that, to change direction, they had to bend their head and wings in a certain way so that they could change direction, right? Based on that, they built their first prototype of an airplane. And these are basically the fathers of uh, oh, I am not going to use that statement because I'm not sure if it is factually correct. But they built the first airplane, right? Known to humans. So that is them. What did these gentlemen do? They were intrigued by birds flying and they had this wish of flying, right? So they looked at how it was possible for these birds to fly and they tried to mimic that such that eventually it led to design of a machine that eventually to this date has been perfected such that airplane or air travel is one of the ways people are using actively to travel around the world, right? Okay, so moving on to this gentleman uh whose picture we don't have because he existed a long long while ago, right? So we have a painting or an illustration instead. So I'm very sure this one will be harder to guess. So this gentleman is Archimedes, right? Now I hope that rings a bell to most people that are attending this class, even if you don't remember what he said, right? So Archimedes was one of the first people who observe the displacement of water, right? When something or somebody was placed in water, right? So he was one of the first people to say that one, when somebody is left into water, they feel weightlessness. Why do they feel weightlessness? It is due to some force that is being applied by water, right? And that force is equal to the amount of displacement of water that occurs, right? So this buoyant force, if for example we had a 5 kg weight that was uh, uh, introduced into this particular can that is filled with water, and it has one outlet over here as shown, right? And if it is dipped up to a certain extent, it will face a buoyant force. Over here, that buoyant force is equal to 2 kilograms, and which means that water equivalent to 2 kilograms will be displaced out of this particular canister so as to accommodate this particular 5 gram weight, right? So that is another observation, a very simple observation. What did he observe? That when somebody is going into a tub of water, water is coming out, right? Or water is rising up. Now, it is not that he is the first person to take a bath, right? There were people before him that might have not given much thought upon this simple phenomena that was occurring, right? So, these are observations, very simple but very, very key observations that have changed our understanding forever, right? So, there are multiple other such observations uh, that you might be aware of. You just need to sit and think about it a little. Uh, then another thing that I wanted to discuss was the art class model, but I think we've discussed it twice today, so I'm going to skip that slide. Another thing that I has kept was hypothesis building. I will briefly talk about it. So the first illustration over here is something we have discussed, that based on a theory or idea, we formulate a well research. We research upon it a little bit more. We find gaps. Based on that, we build a hypothesis. Then after building a hypothesis, we try to see that what can we do, what experiments can be done to answer this particular question that we are putting forward. uh, then we collect the data from those experiments. We look at what are the observations. Then we analyze the data that we get. And based on that, we add something to the initial theory or idea that we began with, right? So this is one of the illustrations that I have taken from a conference proceeding paper, right, which says that deductive or inductive reasoning could lead to a hypothesis, right? And it doesn't have to be true that the hypothesis is a standalone or it will always come first, right? It could have like if, for example, we talk about deductive reasoning, we could formulate a hypothesis, then we could have experiments that are planned based on which we have observations, then we will do more experiments and we will have more observations based on which we will either reject our hypothesis or we will add something more to our hypothesis such that our hypothesis is improved. And after all this is done, we will basically uh, say like if there is enough evidence to back what we are saying, then it will become a theory, right? Similarly, for inductive reasoning, although the observation and hypothesis go the other way around, the other things remain constant, right? So at the end of it, we will have um, uh, hypothesis based on observations to start with, or to like after a hypothesis is formulated, which will eventually, if we have enough data to prove that hypothesis, be determined as a theory, right? So that will be it for this very short segment as well. Yeah, so I'll stop sharing my screen. So that was it from my side. If anybody has a question or a query they want to solve or want me to solve, you are most welcome. You can come forward, you can speak about it. I'll try to answer or address your request. And if not, we'll just end the session and you can access the recording and yeah, Deepika. Yes, you can go ahead. Deepika, your mic is turned off.
Ma'am, what kind of questions should we expect in exams like reasoning or numericals or perception wise, what or theoretical?
So I think it will be more conceptual. It is a course or content specific again. In this course, since you do not really have any numerical based, you know, material that is being taught to you or being shared with you, it will mostly be conceptual and reasoning based. Right. So there could be sequences that are asked based on your observation skills. You will have to
Ma'am,
answer
perception
that
wise questions will be coming.
they could. So I am not actually the person who will be devising your this thing exam. But yeah, reasoning and conceptual questions could come. If you want me to ask this question to the professor in charge and the TA, I will. So if they
Yes,
are
ma'am.
willing to answer, I will let you know in the next class. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Satyanarayan, you can also go ahead.
Yeah, madam. I have a question. Inductive reason I have understood. It started
Yeah.
with the observation and ended with the theory. The deductive, can you have any example to understand it better?
Okay. So okay. It does not end with a theory, it ends with a conclusion. So, what inductive reasoning is that, for example, I am observing something, even if the sample size is very less. Like, I don't know if you understand that terminology. So, let me dial it down for you. So, for example, if I was to go outside of my room and if I was to see two people in my hall who were fighting, right? And say it is my first day in this hall, and based on that observation, I say that these two people are fighting. So everybody in my hall fights, right? Or people in my hall generally fight. This is a conclusion that I'm giving based on uh, seeing two people that were fighting. So the sample size was very small. Like, for example, on the other hand, if I would have seen that there were two people on this floor who were fighting, and there were two other people on some different in some different block who were fighting. But then I went to a segment that is the reading room where people were having a good time. Then there were a number of people in the TV room that were having a good time. So I do not make this final conclusion, right, based on the more sample size of data that now have, that okay, I think I have observed around 50 people now, and maybe four of them were fighting. So based on that, I cannot say that people in my hall fight, or generally the people in my hall are always fighting, right? So if based on even small sample size of observations, I make a conclusion, it is known as inductive reasoning. Whereas if I research it well, and based on that, I make an observation, and for example, uh, in the second scenario that I said, based on that, I make a hypothesis, or I raise a question or a statement that I think that the people in my hall fight in corridors, right? But this is a hypothesis that I am saying, that I think that the people in my hall fight in corridors, right? Now, to prove this hypothesis, I need to perform some experiments. Now, what could be the experiments in this case? That there are, say, 8 blocks in my hall, and each block has 3 floors, right? I go in all 8 blocks, in all of these floors, multiple times in the next week, and then I see whether this pattern is true or not, right? Based on that, I will either prove my hypothesis or disprove my hypothesis. So that is what deductive reasoning is. Like, do you
Okay,
want
madam.
me
Okay,
to
ma'am. Yeah, yeah.
scientific example? Okay. But it's just okay. And Simran, you can also go forward.
Ma'am, I actually was facing a doubt in a certain question from our assignment. So can I like clear that out or not?
So is it the week two's assignment?
Yeah.
So will clearing out that doubt also give you the answer of that question?
Okay. So should I like
Matlab, I
share
am
my
just asking. I don't know like which question you are facing a doubt with, but
Ma'am, it
if
is like
that
a
is the
certain
case,
passage and we have to
yeah.
select like the hypothesis, like which
Hmm.
is the correct hypothesis for that given question. But it's like so confusing because I'm not able to understand that what are the basic criteria to choose like the correct option in that particular scenario.
So I have not seen your assessment, and as a blind perspective, so as to not give you the answer, let us not go and see that question also. But
Mm.
maybe I can suggest you to like, what is the question? What is the general statement that you have to select which one is a better hypothesis
And like identify the option which is most suitable hypothesis for that given observation.
for a given observation? Okay.
Yeah.
I think it is very context specific. I don't know if I can give you a generalized
Exactly.
answer.
So I was actually
Yeah.
that's why I was actually thinking, I could just like share my screen if like, we could help out with that particular question because I was like very much doubtful in that one.
Okay, but okay, this is one thing that we have been instructed by NPTEL itself that we are not supposed to discuss the currently ongoing assignments if they are not submitted as yet. So
Okay.
I am afraid that I'll not be able to do.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, so but by the next week, probably it'll be submitted. Hopefully, your answer will be correct. If not, we'll discuss as to what would have been the criteria for determining that, right?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Okay. So, Deepika, do you still have a question or is that a hand raised from before, earlier? Okay. So I am assuming that is it from the doubt side from you guys. Thank you for persevering through the lecture, right? So that is it for this particular week. I'll be ending the session. I hope you guys gained at least some knowledge from it. So I'll first stop the recording actually.